You're good to go, Cindy.
Well, hello, and thank you for coming to our November 2020 presentation. My name is Cindy Robichaud, and I'm the chair of the Kent branch. We appreciate you joining us tonight. For those of you who are coming in the first time, your camera and your microphone have been in the off position, but we still want you to chat with us. So if you hover your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little chat box bubble there. Definitely chat in there. Use the chat box to say hi and where you're from. And if you have any questions for the speaker, just ensure that the little pull down arrow is set to everyone so that we can all see the questions. And you can feel free to ask Jeff a question at any point in time. We also record all our presentations, and they are available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. So again, for those of you who might not have attended a presentation with us before, we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. So Ontario Ancestors has been preserving and promoting family history for over 50 years. There are more than 30 branches all across Ontario, and we're the largest genealogical society in Canada. So that's really saying something. And their website, if you want to check them out, if you're into family history at all, you really should go to the website and browse around at ogs.on.ca. So we are the Kent branch, and we're mainly focused on Kent County research and general family history. We do mentoring and assisting. We focus on education. We have a DNA study group. We hold monthly presentations like this with a variety of topics and speakers. And I guess our gem, I would say, would be our family history library. It's located on the second floor inside the Chatham-Kent Public Library, the main branch. It's currently closed due to COVID, unfortunately. But as you can see, we have lots of resources there. This branch has been built for the last 40 some years. So it is a wonderful resource for anybody who is searching Kent County ancestors. But even though our branch library right now is closed, you can still stay up to date with what we're doing and communicate with us via our website, on our really, really active Facebook group, and you can also email us. So what have we been doing over the past month since we got together last? Some of you might know that we applied in the spring for the Canadian Summer Jobs Grant, and we were approved. We did postpone hiring our intern at that time because our library was closed and we weren't sure exactly, what we were going to have the student do if they couldn't go into our facility. So in October, we ended up starting the program, and we hired Paige Roman. She's from the Blenheim area. She's a graduate of the University of Ottawa, and she will be returning to the University of Western and taking the library sciences. So this position is a good fit for her. Paige will be with us until about the end of December, and she will be working on a variety of projects. So we'd like to say welcome to Paige. Also, if you're members of the Kent branch, hopefully you've been checking out the members only section, because with our library being closed, we've been really focusing on getting material up there for you so you could access it from home. Since last month, 2 new categories have been added: First Nations and the voters list, and there's material inside of both of those categories. There's been some new cemetery photos added to the cemetery section, and there's been a couple new family histories uploaded as well. So as I mentioned, if you're a member of the branch, be sure to check back often because we're always putting material there for you. Something else we've been working on this past month is a multi-branch scanning project. The society purchased a microfilm scanner and have offered to take it to the branches out in the province to do some scanning of microfilm reels. So the Kent branch, Essex branch, Oxford branch, and London Middlesex branch have gotten together, and they've sent their microfilm reels to the Kent branch. Steve Fulton, the past president, brought the machine down and set it up, and has done some training with Colleen LeBay and with Paige on getting this project up and going. So we're really excited about this. It's a really great project that we're doing as a collective bunch of branches. So again, once those microfilms have been scanned, they'll likely go up into the members only section. And they're a variety of, every branch had something different, so there's a variety of things that are being scanned. And then, just in time for Christmas, if you're, again, you might recall last year, we published the Canadian Achievement Volume Number 2, The Development of Chatham-Kent County. This book sold out like hotcakes last year. We were going to put another order in this spring, but then when COVID hit, we just postponed that for a bit. So we thought this would be another good time to put another order in to get some more books in for Christmas. So you can go to our website and order and pay right on our website, or you can send us an email and we can make arrangements on how to get the book to you. Basically, it is, as it says, the very, very early. So a lot of people might be familiar with the book Romantic Kent. This book even predates that. So Reverend Hugh Cowan was a traveling horseback minister, and it was his writings as he was going from county to county and township, what he saw, the development of the land, and what was going on, early settlers of all the different towns and townships. So it really is jam-packed with a lot of information. So if you're interested, like I say, go to our website or you can shoot us an email. And then lastly, but probably most importantly, is just a reminder that it is membership time. So if you are a current member, this is your reminder, it's time to renew. And if you're a new member, now is a really great time to join, because we have a promotion called Grow Our Family. So if you're a new member, you can partner up with a renewing member, and then both of you will get 50% off your membership. So if you're a new member and don't maybe know a current member, shoot us an email and we can hook you up with somebody, and you both get 50% off of your membership. And if you do this before November, the end of November, you'll also be entered into some really great early bird draws. So new people come on board, current members, renewing members, go out and find yourself that new person and bring them on to grow our family. Okay, so tonight's presentation, Rooted in Kent and Beyond. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about how this presentation came to be. So we were contacted by a local antique shop here in Chatham. They reached out to our past chair, Judy Bouchard, and they mentioned to her that they had some items in their collection that they were wondering whether we would be interested in. And of course, Judy said yes. So these school scribblers were sent over to us. Judy brought them into our library, and of course we were all excited to find these treasures. So, you know, we leafed through them and there was some really great information in there, and we thought, you know what, let's try to find them a home. So we scanned them and we did find them a home. Luckily, our cemetery coordinator, Janet, happened to be at the library and also saw that these scribblers, and as luck would have it, she actually grew up in the area of Kent Bridge, where Eddie Hawkins and Roy Hawkins, which were written on the back and inside the books, were from. And actually, Janet even knew of the Hawkins family as she had grown up with them. So Janet was tasked with tracking down some descendants or some relatives who may be interested in this book. So the search was on. And as I said, Janet knew the family, so it didn't take her very long to track down Jeff. And after several emails back and forth, we learned that Jeff had a deep roots in Kent County, and he had a great passion for genealogy and for history. And we asked him if he would share his family history and some stories with us, to which he agreed. So that actually brought us to tonight's presentation. As I said, Jeff was originally from the Kent Bridge area, and he's now in the Owen Sound area. He has deep roots with many families here in Chatham-Kent. He has been the Reverend at Glory United Church for 33 years. He was the Padre at his local branch Legion as well. And he also helped with the digitization project with the Huron County Library and an archivist for the United Church Archives. He has a deep passion for history and genealogy. And as we were talking, he mentioned to me, you know, I did donate my family history back in, I think, 1997 or, you know, way back in. And I went rooting through and we did find it and we brought it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. He really does have deep roots in Chatham. So his donation of his family history is in our collection, and it's accessible to anybody who wants to come in and do a little bit of research. So without continuing on, Jeff, I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm going to turn my camera off, and this, do you want me to turn the screen right off of my PowerPoint here of sharing, and then it can just go right over to you? I will stop that. Stop sharing. Okay, and then like I say, I'm going to turn my camera off, and I will let you take it away, Jeff.
Okay. Well, thank you, Cindy. And it's great to be with everybody tonight and share a little bit of this, of the history of my family history. I know there are a number of people signed in. I've been watching some coming in, and I know that people were going to be watching tonight that are relatives, and actually their names will be in the book that Cindy was just showing. I'm just going to make one slight correction to Cindy's opening slide. There was, it's 1797 to 1997. She had 1979. Just the numbers moved around a little bit. So it was the 200 years of the Shaw family, and I will be sharing a little bit more about that later on. People have always said, when did you actually get started, or how did you get started in doing family history? Well, 43 years ago, 44 years ago even, as a grade 7 project for history class, we were asked to trace the property that we were living on for a project for history class, and found out then that we had great understanding of back routes within Camden Township at Camp Bridge. We knew there had to be some connection because at the out front of the farm was the Shawbank Cemetery. And so what is the people in the cemetery, and what did they do in the past, and how did we come about where we are today? And so I started researching, and I had 2 great aunts that added to the collection and the information, and we started building a family history from there. And so decided that by 1997, if we were going to be around for 200 years, we might as well do a celebration, and we did. We erected a new stone in the cemetery. We put out the family history. I even have my shirt on tonight from that reunion with the old Shaw logo. Yes, that was in '97. Fortunately enough, it still fits me today, so that's all right. Since that time, or since I started into family history, I think kind of things developed over that. And if you're interested in family history, you've got to be interested in history in one sense of the word also. When I graduated from high school in Dresden in 1982, Dennis Makoweski, the history teacher at the time, asked if I would write the history of education in Dresden. It was a special year for the town. And I was the 4th generation to attend school in Dresden. And so we put a collection together as part of the yearbook for that year. So then I started the university, and guess what I took in history? I have a Bachelor of Arts in History degree from the University of Windsor. And during my first summer placement as a student with student job, I was hired by the town of Ridgetown to write put together pictures and articles about the business section of Ridgetown. That publication has never been put together as far as a publication, but the binders and material is still, I believe, all in the town of Ridgetown. It was at one time housed in the Ridge House. So that material was all there. And then went on, and church history took over, and I went into the ministry then and came to Gorey in '88. In '92, we broke the history of our congregations for a very special 100th anniversary of both of our churches that year. And subsequently, things moved up there, and I'm in the process of now writing another family history in Rochester of a family. They've asked me to do that for them, and I will be speaking a little bit towards that in a presentation for Huron County coming up in April of next year. To me, genealogy is more than a list of names and dates. You must also research history. And why? in order to understand not only the life of the person, but what was happening around them to influence their life. And as an example, I want to just actually go through my direct lineage for the first 2 or 3 years. Captain William Shaw, who was the first of the Shaw family to come to Camp Bridge, married in 1788 in Detroit, came up into Dover Township and settled, and then came on to the farm in Camp Bridge, close to where the Shawbank Cemetery is, and remained there. He was a British soldier and come over and was captain in the local militia for the War of 1812, and it was very much influenced his life at that time. In my own direct line, the next generation, his son Absalom was in the rebellions of 1837. His then absent son Bingley Shaw went to California to the gold rush from 1856 to 1861. Then we remained on the farm after that, and life continued. But those individuals' lives were shaped not just because they born and died, but because of the events that was happening around them. As I was speaking with Don Shaw in St. Louis the other day, we were talking about this whole idea, and I mentioned to him about Linda Ellis's poem, The Dash. And the opening lines of that poem start, "I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend, and he referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following dates with tears. But he said, what mattered most of all was the dash between the years." To me, family history is more than just that name and a birth date and a death date. It is the dash in between that makes that person who we are, and also who he was or she was, but also who we are today, because of the traditions and the experiences that were passed down from one generation to the next. And so tonight I want to talk about some of those dashes, not only within the Shaw family, but others. And so we have to set the mood. We have to go back in history now to Camp Bridge. I've been, Camp Bridge isn't a very big community, but have been very close tied to, and Sunday mornings, I even have some former members of the old United Church in Camp Bridge sign in to watch our online services now with COVID. And so to set that mood, we're going to go back in a few years. I'm going to don my hat, and we're going to journey back in time. This hat was property of the late Alf Langford, who bought it in 1904 for his sister's wedding in Camp Bridge. And I first received it in 1980 and wore it for the first time at that point and have had it with me ever since. And so I thought, well, we're speaking of family. We will include Alf in it tonight. Starting back to Captain William. Captain William was married to Ruth McKerrigan. Of great interest on the McKerrigan side of the family, her sister was married to Hugh Holmes, grandfather of Dr. T.K. Holmes. So indirectly, we're somewhat related to the Holmes family. And also another sister was related to David Cummer in the Toronto area. And there's a large Cummer family history as well. So we have extensive generations in that particular branch. And down, if you look at the individual families of Captain William Shaw, his children all married, of course, within the area. And at one time, if I drive from Tecumseh's Monument through to Camp Bridge, practically every farm in that stretch of highway through Thamesville on through to Camp Bridge, every farm at some point in the last 200 plus years have been owned by somebody as a descendant of Captain William and Ruth McKerrigan Shaw. The oldest son, William, was killed in the War of 1812. And if you go to the Battle of the Longwoods, the other side of Wardsville, there's an old cairn there, but there is a new monument put up with wonderful flags, a beautiful sight. And William Shaw's name is listed as part of the Kent militia who were killed at that Battle of the Longwoods. The second son, Thomas, was a lieutenant in the War of 1812, and his wife, Jane Reynolds, was the daughter of George Reynolds and one of the 8 Reynolds girls in the Kent Bridge area. And a number of people in the St. Louis area that are watching tonight for a presentation and in other parts of Missouri are descended from that branch of the family. The next daughter, Nancy, never married. The next daughter, Hannah, married a Johnson Orr, and that family all went to the Niagara Falls area. Captain John Shaw, the next son, his first wife was a Fleming from the Wardsville area. And after she died, her second wife was also a Shaw, Anne Shaw, but also from the Wardsville area. And there are a number of descendants from that family, not only around the Kent Bridge area, but across Ontario and through the States. That's where the Beaubeer family comes in. And the one son married into the Gadd family, which the Gadd Cemetery and Howard Township, and so forth. And Rhonda Long is watching tonight, and she is one of the descendants of that Captain John Shaw family. Next son, Alexander, never married. My branch, Absalom Shaw, his wife was Mary Shaw, daughter of Amos Bush Shaw from Chatham Township, and a great and large family of Shaws on that side, and I'll speak about that a little later on. The next son was James Gower Shaw, and who also married one of those Reynolds girls. Jane married Amos Thomas. Their son was a doctor in Kankakee, Illinois. Also, Simcoe J. Thomas was quite well known in the Bothwell area over the years, as well was Ninian Thomas in the Thamesville area. And then the youngest son, Uriah, also married a Shaw. So we got Shaws marrying Shaws in every direction imaginable. They always said about my great-great-grandfather, he was as close to being a Shaw as you could get, because his both parents were Shaws, Absalom Mary Shaw, and Mary Shaw's father, Amos Shaw, married Sarah Shaw. And of course, William married the McKirrigan. So out of 4 grandparents, only one was not a Shaw. So he was pretty well steeped in the Shaws, and pretty well all from England in that light. So that gives you a little bit of a background of the early family connections of the immediate Shaw family. And when we put out the book in 97, I was pleased to say that after the years of researching, I could trace down 5,000 blood descendants, not marrying in and spouses, but direct blood descendants for that publication. And I know it's been mentioned that it was almost like a university dissertation to put it together, but it was not only the family history, but the history of Canada or wherever they were living to gain that. The Watts family in Thamesville are also descended from the Tom Shaw, the Watts Hotel, the Tecumseh Hotel, and the original Watts Hotel actually stood where Tecumseh's monument is now. It was built on the battlefield as a stagecoach house in the 1850s. And I was lucky enough to find an early picture of it to put in the publication as well. And so there, things developed. As the years developed, so did the family and the history. Now you might say, okay, that's fine. That's one branch, but how many other branches may you have association with? Well, I mentioned the McKirrigans and the Holmes and so forth. With the Amos Shaw branch, there are the Grovers and the Langfords, and yes, connected with that side of the house, Alf Langford, who owned this hat that I'm wearing, is a relative on that Amos Shaw side of the house. When you go back to Bingley Shaw's wife, she was a Desmond, and if you go back in the Desmond family, we have the Brendages, we get the Crowe family, and the Everett family, the Scarlett family, and the Jackman family. all early settlers within Kent County. The Crows, of course, a lot in Dover Township, the Everetts out in Harwich and Howard, the Scarlets up around the Shetland area, as well as the Jackmans. That is all pretty well the various sides of one branch of my father's side. The Hawkins side comes out of Elgin County, along with the Cutler family, as well as the Reichman family, which is of Dutch New York descent. And there's been a great history put together of the Reichman family by Sharon Marshall in the St. Thomas area. And the first Hawkins that was in the St. Thomas area was actually a doctor in the 1830s. So long-standing in Elgin County as well. When you go over to my mother's side of the house, onto the Hazlitt side, you also get into the Austins and the Griffiths that came to the Dresden area from Adolphustown. But like pretty well everybody else in Kent County, I have Blackburn blood in me as well through the Hazlitt side, and we know how large a history the Blackburn family is. Also on my mother's side are the Merediths and the Rosses and the Mackenzies coming out of Haldimand County into Chatham Township down on the Lindsay side road. And also the Ellis family in the Dresden area coming from Prince Edward County, the Ackerleys coming from Queens County, New Brunswick to Ontario. Also the Loves, the Lindsays, the Bournes, and the Lorries all coming from Eastern Ontario into Kent County. I talk about the families coming from the 1790s into the 1800s up into the 1850s and so forth. And Cindy said, you know, I have long, deep roots in Kent County. I'm also second generation Canadian because my grandmother on the Hawkins side, Ray, that she was showing the scribbler to, his wife, Elsie, came from England in 1921 with her mother and dad after the First World War. And so they came over, and my dad and my aunt and uncle, of course, they come over. She came over as a young girl, about 10 years of age, was married here, had a family. That's my father's generation, and now my generation. So even though we have 200 years plus of history within Kent, we also have just 100 years, not even 100 till next year, since from the time that they came over. So there are a lot of ways of looking at family history in that light. You might say, okay, that's great. And how did you go about this? And, you know, 1997, we didn't have a lot of computers in those days. No, we didn't. I wrote the book without a computer. I printed it out on a computer, but the research was never done on a computer. I traveled across the United States and various places of Ontario and Canada. I was to St. Louis to see the folks. I'd been in Kankakee, Illinois, and up into Wisconsin. I went to California to track down some of these various branches because that was the only way to locate. I had the privilege of being in California to visit Helen Shaw. Now, Helen turned 100 years old just shortly after the reunion, and then died a couple of months after that. But Helen lived in California and was an actress. And if any of you know the movie Parenthood, Helen played the great-grandmother in that movie and looked as natural as can be in that movie as she did in real life. So we have a little bit of claim to fame to Hollywood through Helen's association. And somebody said, well, wasn't that a lot of traveling and expense and so forth? Oh, I said, I got to see the country and traveling all around. And to me, there's nothing like the hands-on experience. We were looking for a tombstone in Kankakee, Illinois, and actually it's around the St. Anne's area. And somebody said, oh, we're beginning to think we know where it is. And we went down a back road and back a long lane to an old cemetery all grown up with weeds. And here's this great big stone to Dr. Thomas out there in that old cemetery. I've been through that area 3 or 4 times since on my way to St. Louis in particular, and I always stop to make a visit in that cemetery. There's no family left in that area, and so it's a little bit of a tribute. Yesterday, Susan and I drove to St. George, Ontario here to take a picture of a stone because there isn't a picture online, and I needed it for the book that I'm currently working on. But it was something to walk in there and experience the feeling. I went to California to see a lady, and she says to me, she says, I can remember my mother having a whole album of pictures. She said she kept them in a pink bread box. But she said, I think maybe that bread box got thrown out. But I think I put the pictures in an album. So we hunted through stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines and books in her house. And we found the albums. And we opened them up. And I kind of looked at her because I would say 95% of them were tintype. And she said to me, do you know anybody? Now I was probably 30 years of age. The pictures were probably 100 years old. And I went, well, no, probably not. So we started looking through them, and it was a wonderful find because her mother had sat down years ago, took them out of an old photo album, tore the old album all apart, glued paper on the back of each one of those tintype pictures and put the name on it. And a lot of the field pictures and that are in the Shaw book and the other early Beaubeer pictures that we found within, some of them had died in the 1870s, even some in the 1860s. There were, of the tintypes, the names were on the back. She said, do you know them now? I said, oh yes, I know where they fit in now. It was a wonderful find. But you don't find that sitting on a computer. I mentioned talking with Don Shaw the other day, and he told me about his grandmother coming from northern Italy, and that they went to northern Italy for a visit. And I said, that's exactly what I'm speaking of. You can see a picture of northern Italy and said, that's where my grandmother came from. And it's okay. You can go to northern Italy and stand in the mountains of northern Italy close to the Swiss border and say, this is where my grandmother came from, and stand there with pride. That is the way that I feel when it comes to researching history. Yes, it's great to have the internet. I've found some wonderful information and documents. But I'm still old-fashioned, and I still like the hands-on work. As Susan made the comment the other day when we're traveling down to St. George, and we passed a couple other cemeteries, and we went through New Hamburg, or just south of New Hamburg, where this family that came from that I'm researching, and she made the comment, which she has made the comment before. She said about me that I've never met a cemetery I didn't like. I guess that's one of the things about being a genealogist and those dates, but it's just not the stone with the date beginning and end, but it's that dash, as I mentioned earlier, in between. I wanted to share a couple of different artifacts with you tonight that I have in my collection that kind of go back to the early time of Kent Bridge and the area. I have a great postcard collection. Postcards are a wonderful thing because it also talks about maybe the reading on the back of it, but it shows the experience of, and I'm not sure, I'm going to hold one of these up to the screen, but not to my cam, but I'm not too sure. Pictures like this of the early start of Kent Bridge. That's the 4 main corners of Kent Bridge. And so, ones like that, what the people were living. There used to be an old store on the corner called Peaches General Store. There were four stores on the corners in Kent Bridge. And my great-great-grandfather went out one night and said, It was getting late, and he said to old Mr. Pisha, he said, I'd like to get a loaf of bread. Mr. Pisha said, well, we're closed. It's getting kind of dark, Bing. Why don't you go home? And he said, well, can't you let me have it? He said, well, how am I going to, unless I unlock the door and then everybody's going to want to come in, how am I going to give you the loaf of bread? He says, just shove it out through the keyhole. It'll straighten out afterwards. Those are the stories that make the family history. Not only the story, but in that picture is the front part, showing the front portion of Pisha's store. But at the same time, you find things like this when you're going through family history, one of the bills from the A.J. Pisha store. Those put the things together that make a family history. A number of years ago, I was given this letter by a fella. It came out of the old Williams house on the River Road in Howard Township. It's addressed to John Williams, Esquire, in 1851 from his son-in-law, who was living in Buffalo at the time and was basically destitute, trying to run a grocery store. And but that was how it worked. The son-in-law was D.R. Van Allen, great owner of the Van Allen Mills in Chatham later on. But it's a letter that says, you know, not everything was roses from one day to the next. They did return to Canada the next year, but there is a lot of history in those documents. Second one is a letter from, let's get the notes here, from John Bolton Sr. in Don Township and John Crafts, sent to Jean Baby, the treasurer in Sandwich, in 1845, talking about dues and money ownership for property in Don Township. And then a crown sale deed dating 1850, when William D. Everett, one of the great merchants of Chatham, was buying land in Zone Township. Again, there's not many crown land deeds floating around the countryside in these days, and I'm sure that possibly Cindy's going to be in touch with me and say, hey, can we scan some of that material? And so that is why I'm sharing with them. And also, I pulled this one out when I was going through the collection of the woolen goods and wool from a factory in Chatham in 1876. You never know what you're going to find when you're going through an antique sale or an antique store, as Cindy received the books from that antique shop in Chatham from Grandpa and his brother. Things come across the internet. I buy things off of eBay for historical reason and preservation. There are wonderful things to be had out there in the world of history and genealogy. I just not only focus my research on the family, but all the families around the Kent Bridge area in the past, and even in my own area now in Howick Township and Huron County as the historian and genealogist for our area here. But the one thing that I have found when writing a family history, and you will see it if you peruse through the O. Shaw book that I wrote in '97, everybody says, well, where did you get that information? How do you know? Can you prove that that is right, and so forth? Well, I use footnotes. If I find a newspaper article, I quote the paper, a death registration, a birth registration, a marriage registration, any little bit of information that maybe is possibly different from what story has been handed down for generations, there is a footnote. There is identification as to where that has come from. Of course, you always put in that beginning, errors and omissions expected. And yes, nothing is perfect, but it's always good to have those little connections. Cindy mentioned to you at the beginning of the presentation about my association with archives and researching in a variety of places. I was on the Archives, History and Archives Committee for all of Canada for the United Church, and worked through the archives in Toronto for a number of years, and as the archivist for London Conference and our here in Perth Presbytery with the church. That was kind of my contribution to Presbytery, was my history background. Have shared a number of archives in Michigan and in libraries in St. Louis and Wisconsin, out in California, Ottawa, Toronto, and currently helping in Huron County scan with the scanning project, digitalization of the newspaper for Howick Township. We were just about ready to start have them gone to Godrich to be scanned when COVID hit, so we haven't got that done, but there's over 300 issues of Howick Township newspapers plans on having scanned, and it's a wonderful program that that the Huron County Library and through the Huron Museum is doing about scanning the newspapers in Huron County. You can go online, and the research and how you're able to find the information for this area is just marvelous, and I will give a shout out to the folks in Huron County for that special time. I know Deb Coslin is listening tonight, and so we'll be working on that project coming up later on. One other thing that I wanted to mention to you is that come spring, and Janet is not really aware of possibly of me doing this yet as the cemetery coordinator for the Kent branch, but I am familiar with a number of unmarked graves in Shawbank Cemetery. I was caretaker of that cemetery for years growing up, and researched a lot of the names that were there, mostly family and neighbors from that area. And so I have a nice little list of things to go over with Janet sometime of those who are buried there. There are no stones for. And also I have about 5 other locations of former cemeteries that do not exist. There are some stones in some of these little hidden nooks and crannies that I'm aware of. But when we're done with this COVID come next spring, it's a journey to Chatham to show Janet where some of these stones are. There's a little old Bedford cemetery that I don't know whether anybody knows about. There's about 2 or 3 stones back in the back of a farm, 2 or 3 along number 2 highway. And I know Janet is listening, and so she's going to be holding me to this. But that's going to be the project. In fact, I received a little book years ago when I was doing some research on the Shaw family about the other side. Actually, this was a history of the Shaws that was written for both sides of the house, back with Amos and Mary Shaw. And it talks about Amos and Sarah Shaw. No, Amos Shaw was known as Bush Shaw, lived on the Cambridge town line on the Chatham Township side. And it said in this little book that I found, that was handwritten by one of the family members, they started a cemetery on the farm, and their friends were buried there. He willed the farm to one of his daughters, and after a short time was sold through efforts of litigation. The parties who bought the farm tore down the fence, and the tombstones were thrown into a heap and plowed over, but there was never a crop raised in that area. This was on a rise of ground opposite Norton's Gate on the Chatham and Camden town line. I still claim that those tombstones are buried on that little knoll in that farm. It's always been my wish to do a little bit of investigating and some prodding around to see if those stones still exist. And it is also involved with the Grover family in Louisville, and some of the early branches of that family as well. So that's one of those new field trip projects that Jen and I are going to be taking. Years ago, Ben Dawson and I went on a journey one day, and we gathered up a tombstone out of a field, and it actually sits in the shed on the farm that I was raised in for Lydia Bedford, that died in 1840. And it was going to be tumbling down the riverbank in Howard Township if we did not rescue it that day. And so it's been sitting in that shed for many years. Ben has since passed away, but we have preserved that for posterity now with that understanding. That has given you a little bit of an understanding of my experiences, the research that I have shared within the various areas. The Shaw family has been a long-standing family within Camp Bridge, but has gone on to various places. As I mentioned, the folks in St. Louis, there's folks in California, there's folks in all across the United States. And one interesting story that I found in a little ledger book in the archives in Oregon is a family, an Everett family, but Mrs. Everett was a Shaw, left Camp Bridge. They had lost a child and is buried in Shawbank Cemetery. And they went from Camp Bridge to Philadelphia. And they left a daughter in Philadelphia married. And they went on to the Carolinas. And they left a daughter that married in the Carolinas. And then they went on to the Dakotas. And a brother joined them in the Dakotas who had also married one of the Shaw girls. And they left a couple of infants while they were there. And then they went on to Oregon. But one of the younger daughters in the family decided when they were heading to the Dakotas that she was going to write down her story. And so the railroad conductor on the train gave her a little book. It was like a diary. And she kept that diary from the time they left for the Dakotas, for the 4 or 5 years they lived in the Dakotas, on through until Hillsboro, Oregon. And it is a great detail about what went on at school, when they were killing chickens, when they were painting the house and working in the yard and so forth. It was a great find, and I had it transcribed by a lady out in Portland and sent me a transcription of it to include, and sections of that diary are in the Shaw history. It also crosses over into the Everett side of the family, because it seems like every time you turned around, there was another connection. I talked about Bush Shaw, his son James married a Blackburn. And so there again, we cross over into another long-standing family within the township as well. Another daughter in that side of the house married a Merritt. So there again, we're back into Chatham Township with the connections. And when you talk about the Reynolds family that Thomas and James both married into, one of the other Reynolds girls married a Kellogg in Camp Bridge. And one of those Kellogg girls married a Pickard, and it brings you back into the Pickard family that is all buried in the Shawbank Cemetery as well. And actually the oldest stone from original time is the is Harmon Pickard that died in 1835. But the one other thing that I found in this little book that I was not aware of until we found the little book, and we had heard stories about it, but it was after the Shaw book was printed, is that there were 2 wooden stones originally in Shawbank Cemetery. One for William Shaw Jr., who died in the War of 1812, and one for his father, Captain William, that died in 1822. They were preserved by a great aunt of mine, Helen McLaughlin in Toronto, and cared for, but eventually disintegrated and disappeared. But we have record in this little book that I found of those 2 stones, and of significance. And I knew through other documents, on the top of the stone for Captain William in 1822 was carved the square and compass, for he joined the lodge, Masonic Lodge, in the 1790s in Detroit, and then went to and took his demit and went to Niagara on the lake, and held his membership there for a number of years, and one branch of the family has belonged to the lodge ever since, and I have the great honor to carry on that tradition as past Grand Chaplain within the Lodge for Ontario, and carrying on the Masonic tradition that he started back in the 1790s and carried on through the generations. Family history is something that will repeat itself. But as you remember, it is the dash that is the most important part, not necessarily the year you were born or the year that you died, but what you did between those dates, your experiences, and the time that you shared together with those around you and shared your experiences with the other generation is what genealogy and family history, to me, is all about. I think I will leave it at that. I'm sure there may be some questions or comments that people would like to share, but I'm going to turn things back over to Cindy, or I'm not sure. We're just kind of having some fun with this tonight, and so hopefully that gives you an idea of the past history that I've shared and my work and adventures. And Cindy, it's all yours.
Okay, I think my mic's on.
Yep.
Yep, good, perfect. Wow, that was fantastic. So first I have to apologize for having the wrong date. I think it was my fingers were slipping on the slide when I was typing it in. So I'm glad you caught that. And yeah, it is so important that, you know, you learn about the history of the area and what was happening, because what was going on around your ancestors really impacted them and, you know, made them decide to do what they did. And, you know, learning from that, it's very important to know what the history was. So that was a really good takeaway. And the dash, you know, I've heard other people talk about that, the importance of knowing it's not just numbers, right? It's what happened in their lives. So I think that there's also been a couple people chatting in the chat box, if you've had a chance to look at it too.
Yeah,
I know.
I was concentrating on reading. I could see things were coming up, but I was kind of hard to concentrate on that too.
Yeah, I know there's a couple folks there that mentioned they had connections to the Crowe family.
Okay.
And we had luckily received a donation from Roberta Crowe, a lady who her life's passion was genealogy. She had done it for, you know, 40, 50 years. I don't know exactly. But when she had to downsize and go into, you know, another facility, she wasn't able to take her collection with her. So she donated to us. And literally there are like 100 binders of her life's work. So I think everybody in Kent County is probably connected to a Crowe in those binders.
Kind of like the Blackburn and the Arnolds.
Exactly. And we're diligently working on trying to get these things scanned and put them up into that members only section. So you folks at home can look at it. You know, you don't have to come all the way to Chatham. And I see that Colleen, it looks like Colleen and Marjorie have a Dolson connection. So I think they just found each other too. So we've made a cousin connection on here tonight, which is great. And if people are looking to see if you know, have a family here that we might have some information on, if you go to our website and then search the surname index, mind you, not every single family is on there, obviously, but you can, you know, look around on there and see if we do have your ancestor mentioned there. So we you know, again, we're diligently trying to work and get as much digitized. I know, I agree with you, not everything's online. And unfortunately right now the in-person, which is the best, you know, is not happening very often right now. So we're trying to do second best. And, you know, but you're absolutely right that making those connections, putting your, you know, your feet on the ground where your ancestor stood is just, if you're not into genealogy, I guess you don't understand it. It's just, you know, right to the heart. And it's just, my ancestor stood here, or, you know, looked at this view, or, you know, touched this building. It's just amazing. So yeah, you did a great presentation. I truly appreciate it. And you're very, very well versed in the families here in Chatham-Kent. So I don't know if Fran, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If you, I don't know whether you want it put up or not, but if you want to post my email address at any time, go ahead. I have no problems with that. If somebody wants to contact me, and I just noticed that Leslie Graham put up a post in that, and yes, she was I know the connection there with the Fentons out in Blenheim and my ex-wife. So there's connections there that come from that side too. So just go ahead and put the address up there if you need to.
Okay, that's great. Fran, did you notice? Fran was watching.
Yeah, I did. I was just waiting till everybody got done talking. I didn't want to interrupt. There is a question.
Okay.
It says, Jeff, I have an ancestor who married into the Shaw family. John William Inglis married Frances Fanny Shaw, daughter of Sylvester S. Shaw, son of Amos Shaw.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to Frances. Do you have any information on her?
I probably do. Mind you, not off the top of my head. But yes, I know exactly the Amos I was talking about, the Amos Bushaw. His son was Sylvester. It was his other Sylvester's sister, the Mary, that married my Absalom. So I'm the direct line from that as well. And so the name does make a connection. I could walk over and probably pull a book off the shelf. But if they want to contact me, I'll see what I can find for them.
That's great.
Yep. And there could be a connection also with the Ingalls side through the McKirrigan side, because into the McKirrigans there is some Ingalls thrown in there as well too. So there could be a double connection there.
Okay, and Ron's saying that he's connected to the Crowe family. There's actually a lot of people connected to the Crowe family. Fentons.
Almost all of Dover Township.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, Fran, that you saw?
I didn't see any other questions, no.
Okay, the Hugh family. Oh, one more message popped up at the bottom. Okay, Jacob Ingalls was John's father. Lucinda Gibson was his mother. That was from Sherry.
Okay. Yeah, well, I was going to say there, I saw that one come up. So have Sherry just send me some, an email and so forth, and I can go through my records and see what I can find for. I've already had one lady contact me last week in Hamilton, and she had saw the post ahead of time that I was speaking, and she was wondering about a certain family of Shaws in Kent Bridge, and with 5 minutes, we knew exactly who we were talking about. So,
well, great.
I was surprised how fast it went even before we did the program.
Wonderful. And I think Sherry has provided her email for you if you wanted to put it down there. And then there is a question, Fran, from Ron.
Yeah, when did immigration records occur from Ontario to USA?
Ooh,
when did they start?
Yeah, that's what it said. When did they happen anyway?
Yeah. When did they start recording the transition?
Yeah.
I would say officially they probably didn't start till later on, until about 1880 or so, because I know when there's 2 or 3 families I mentioned that are watching in St. Louis, when they crossed over in the 1860s, there's no record of them crossing over. In my Desmond side, they owned part of Harson's Island, and Timothy Desmond, who owned a side paddle wheeler, which capsized at Elginak years back. His mother and dad are actually buried in the Elginak Cemetery, even though they were raised in Canada. They eventually went to see, and there's no records about them going across, and they died in the 1870s. And then even when Timothy, which would be about 3rd or 4th grade for myself, died in Romeo, Michigan, I got a picture of him, but there's no records of him crossing the border. I mean, you kind of go across and back and forth, and in those days, crossing the St. Clair River or up to Sarnia and across was just normal routine.
And a lot of those immigration records can be found at Library and Archives Canada. I'm just trying to grab the.
And there's a number of, if anybody is on Ancestry as well, a lot of those U.S. crossing records are on Ancestry as well. I have shared I don't have a regular subscription to Ancestry because I sometimes question some of the family histories that you find on Ancestry as to just how accurate they are with dates or connections and that, but it does give some clues now and then. But it would be another source to check out.
Right, and I posted the link there to the Library and Archives Canada too. I don't know off the top of my head, a Family Search, that might be another place to.
Yes, Family Search.
Yeah, it's a free site, and Library and Archives Canada is also a free, because I think, Ron, I think you said you're in the States, right? So the Library and Archives Canada is our national archives, basically, and it's free to anyone. So you might want to check that out. There's tons of information on there, tons. And then Sue mentions the border crossings on Ancestry, so thanks, Sue.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up farther. Okay. Fran, is there anything else that popped up that you noticed?
I haven't noticed anything, no.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, if we don't have any further questions, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And Deb, you have a great presentation coming in April too. So we truly appreciate it. I think Janet is trying to find your email and she wants to stick it in here too. Unless you just want to.
It's very simple. It's Rev Jeff Hawkins, REVJEFFHAWKINS @gmail.com.
Okay. I'm typing too as you're.
Okay.
Okay, is that it?
Rev Jeff, that's it.
Yay. Okay. I had it. I do have it, and it's buried behind a couple different screens. So I was afraid I was going to lose everybody if I started searching for it. And I asked Janet to look for it, so yeah. She might stick it in there too. There you go, Janet. Thanks, Janet. Okay.
And like you say, come spring, hopefully I'll be able to help out a little bit with Janet on that cemetery end of things. There, like I say, I've got some little things that have been tucked back in the back for years, but I've kind of got back now, and I'll bring some of these documents down that you might want to scan for the collection as well, some of these letters and stuff. So
oh yeah, for sure, bring whatever, anything Kent County related is we're very interested in. And the nice thing about it is we don't have to keep it. We can just scan it and then you take it home with you. So
that's right. And like I say, what I could do is my postcard collection of photo cards, which are actual photographs. There's over 200 of them for places all across Kent and Chatham, and I've a great collection. I think I'm up close to a dozen of the cyclone that hit Chatham back in about 1908, and there's a fair number of them. So there could be some pictures in there that you don't have in that fashion as well. And so, and then I put some stuff out here as well on the table, but as a few props. But I also have a collection of what they used to be called souvenir china. Now I don't know whether this will show up, and it was made prior to the First World War, and this is actually the flood of Dresden in 1904.
Oh.
And the picture on or per se, and for Janet being one of those fellow Thamesvillites, that's the original town hall in Thamesville type thing. So that and there's probably 150 or more pieces that china floating around the house. I might have to move the whole house to Chatham if you wanted too much. So
exactly.
Excuse me, I got another question. Was Bardwick ever part of Chatham-Kent? Barwick.
Barwick.
Yeah.
I don't recognize that name at all. Barwick.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know if anybody else that's on here tonight would have an idea. I know that Valerie Butterfield, so she's our research person, and she's been researching for a long, long time. If she wanted to type, if she had an idea. And I also know that Diane French at one time was also on, and she was our librarian for many years. So yeah. I don't know if either one of them have an idea.
Remember Diane very well.
Oh. West of Fort Frances.
I'm thinking maybe it's part of Harwich instead of Barwich.
Well, it could could be. It could be Harwich and just a typo error down through the years.
Yeah, a lot of people have mentioned that.
Yeah.
So then the answer to Ron, if it was a typo and it is referring to Harwich Township, yes, that is Kent County.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I noticed Leslie Graham just put something up there about Howick, or had a question mark with Howick, and I wondered whether that's where I live now. So I wondered if there was something she had a question about, or if Leslie's still listening or not.
I think she's still here.
Yeah, so she's mentioning, yeah, it's Harwich. I think it's just the way you pronounced it.
Okay.
Okay, well, if you finish up your other projects, I know you mentioned that you had put together a history for Ridgetown. Did I hear that right? And you said it was.
Like I say, it's in 2 black binders. Mm-hmm. I worked with the late Lloyd Mitten, and Gordon Shaw was a lawyer in Ridgetown at the time. They were on the committee that actually did the hiring as a summer student. And I'm pretty sure that those 2 binders were put in the Ridge House on what I put together back in those years. So whether it's still there, I'm not too sure, but I don't think it was ever put into book form.
Right. Well, that's just another tip to maybe start looking for.
Yes.
There's another question.
about the
Do you have any information about the home cemetery on the Thames River just across from Kent Bridge?
Yes. Well, I don't have much on the home cemetery per se, but as I mentioned there earlier, Captain William Shaw's brother-in-law was Hugh Holmes, which is part of that Holmes family, and the start of it, and like I say, grandfather to TK, Tecumseh Kingsley Holmes in Chatham. So I do have information on the Holmes. There might be more on the Holmes cemetery as part of that, but it is, unfortunately, there was a lot of those little cemeteries between Thamesville and Chatham that it's kind of like the field cemetery. Lucky enough, the field cemetery was moved off the riverbank up to the road years back, and so a lot of those stones were saved. A lot of the others went by the wayside, and that's the way these couple are stones with back in this what I refer to as a Bedford cemetery, because I know there was an Elizabeth Bedford stone there as well, but that's kind of those tweaking everybody's curiosity for come spring, but we may have a busload traveling with us.
Yeah, and then coming from the south too, so I know that Sherry is way down south, and a couple other people too. So yeah, that would be great if when things open back up again, people are able to travel, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody again. So don't know how or when that's going to happen, but in the meanwhile, we'll stay in touch, via Zoom and doing these presentations. So
yeah, Sherry says I'm there, so
that's great. And yeah, another great field trip. Absolutely.
Well, like I mentioned, Susan says never met a cemetery I didn't like, so
that's wonderful. Okay, folks, we won't keep you any longer, and truly appreciate it. This was fantastic. It was a great chat with you tonight, so that's definitely
my privilege. And any time,
right,
I could head off in a different direction on something, I'm sure. So
Sure. Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you for joining, everyone. And those people who sent an email in about membership, I will get right back to you. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing everybody again. We don't have any presentations scheduled yet. Nothing for December. We usually take a break. And we haven't been working on anything for 2021 yet because we just weren't sure what was going on. But as I mentioned before, keep looking on our branch website, and our Facebook group are great places. We're always posting what we're doing and any updates and what's coming. So take care, everybody, and we will see you soon. Bye now. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, bye.